Well, we all know now that Brianna's killer started using what's called the dark web at the age of about 14. But what is the dark web? It's very hard to summarise, but it's basically part of the internet that is not visible to the regular search engines, and people who contribute absolutely vile material to it can't be traced. Brianna used it to watch...
No,
not Brianna. Brianna's killer used it to watch videos of the torture and the murder of real people. Now, cybersecurity expert Edward Lucas is joining us now.
Alongside Lauren Lefebvre. Now, 10 years ago, Lauren's son, Breck, was groomed online and was murdered. And she says Brianna's story has broken her heart because, of course, you relate to Brianna's mum, don't you? You feel
Absolutely.
There's so many similarities.
There's such a synergy, and some of the things that she's saying, and just knowing how she feels and how this feeling will be so difficult to live with forever. And there are so many issues that we need dealt with our children online. They are being introduced to content, whether it's the dark web, even on the regular interactions online, things that are, overly sexualized, overly violent, and it becomes more normalized behavior for them. And they're not having that time to mature, for their brains to develop so that they understand, what is right and what is wrong. And I think that's why it's so important that we get restrictions on children's social media. The children are on apps that are supposed to be for 13 years and up, and there's primary school children accessing these apps, lying about their ages because they want to be grown up.
You've been a major campaigner and a contributor to advice to the government on bringing together the Online Safety Act, particularly a measure which relates to whether coroners can have access to data on phones in the case of young people who've been murdered.
It's so important. I mean, when you lose a child in any instance, you want to know everything about how that happened, just so that you can try to grieve and find a new way to go forward. But the act has been so important with all the people that have, worked towards it. One of the other elements that's really important to me is making sure that social media companies take responsibility for what is happening on their platforms. And to me, it's unconscionable that they don't have to take that responsibility.
What can you tell us about what happened to Breck? It's almost exactly 10 years ago now, isn't it?
Yes, I've been dreading sort of coming into the 10-year anniversary, even though every day is hurtful, but it's just there's something about marking that time. Breck was groomed online whilst he was gaming with friends from school. So it seemed like a safe place for him to be. He was having fun, having a laugh. And unfortunately, a predator who also liked to introduce children to the dark web engaged within those gamers over years, making them feel comfortable, mentoring them, teaching them, helping them with their software, with their gaming. And they looked up to him, and he was grooming the whole group, boys all over the UK. And I knew that it wasn't a safe place, and I did everything that I knew how to do at that time as a parent. I even ended up phoning the police. I talked to Breck's teachers. I talked to the school where I worked at. I talked to friends, family, vicar, school nurse, school librarian. People didn't know what advice to give when I said that Breck was being groomed. Because he was a boy, you think of girls as being groomed, but it can be boys as well.
What did Breck say when you talked to him about it?
Well, he was such a confident, chilled guy who I think didn't see the evil in the world. That may have been his vulnerability. He was loved and had friends, did well in school. He didn't believe it. And the predator portrayed me as the, crazy old mean mom who didn't understand technology, who was judgmental, who just didn't understand modern times. And that's how a predator will portray the parents.
Turned the mother against
into the bad guy. I was the bad guy. So I phoned the police, I reported him, and then I even engaged with other parents, sat the boys down, and we talked to them and said, we just don't feel this guy is safe. He seems controlling, he seems manipulative, but the boys thought it was a great place to game. They enjoyed it. And unfortunately, just about a month later, Breck was lured to his death at the predator's flat on my birthday. And I just, there's a million things I wish I had done differently, reported more than just once. learned more about grooming, and that's why I set up the Breck Foundation, because for me, it's about education. In this, in Brianna's case as well, educating people when they see something that doesn't seem right online to report it, to go to someone, to talk to, a teacher or family member.
I have to say to you as a parent, I don't think you're speaking obviously with a huge amount of knowledge and hindsight now, but I think at the time, you couldn't have done any more.
I was a parent who was on the ball.
Yeah.
I just didn't know how powerful these predators can be. And comparing, thinking of nature versus nurture, and you're looking at Brianna's killers, there are some people that, and Breck's, sort of the psychologist for his case, said that they had the mindfulness, Breck's predator was always going to commit a crime and a murder. It's just the type of crazy thinking that they had, and possibly from accessing this horrid content from too young of an age to be able to developmentally understand that it's wrong.
Edward Lucas, you're the author of the book Cyberphobia, Identity, Trust, Security, the Internet. Scarlett Jenkinson certainly, we think, had accessed the dark web. I mean, as Lauren says, you can see awful stuff on the internet, the normal internet. But I think parents would be particularly alarmed by the fact that teenagers could get access to illegal, violent, exploitative, I mean, it's unmentionable, the stuff that's on the dark web. And how easy is it to do that? How easy is it for parents to work out their children are doing that? And is it in any way going to come under the measures of the Online Safety Act?
Well, you're right. The point about the dark web is that it really is the Wild West. Nobody owns it, nobody controls it, and it's really easy to access from any computer. Just a couple of minutes, you download a particular kind of software which gives you the sort of gateway there, and then you have to know where to go, and that's the sort of sinister bit, because you can't just Google like you can Google Good Morning Britain. You have to know a long string of letters and numbers that will take you to some particular website where you may indeed see absolutely horrific things. And this has a horrible effect on people's brains. It desensitizes them. They start not understanding that what they're seeing is actually a real person having a really horrible thing done to them. But I think in a way that's just the tip of the iceberg. The real problem, and what's leading to soaring rates of self-harm, suicide, anxiety, depression, is social media on our kids. And if you imagine, if 15 years ago we'd had this discussion, we had this idea, we're going to give kids this little box that gives them access to anybody in the world and to every content in the world, whether it's horrific or just nasty or just putting pressure on them. And we're going to do this, and they're going to have it in their bedrooms, and the parents aren't going to have any ability to control. Isn't that a good idea? Of course, we'd have said no.
We certainly wouldn't have given it to our children,
no, exactly.
would we?
And
so how do we put that genie back in the bottle? Because it's well out of the bottle now.
Well, the first thing is to understand that if you're doing something online that's free, you're not the customer, you're the product. And these big tech companies are making an enormous amount of money by selling our attention span. So the ads that they sell, whether it's on Instagram or wherever, are the way they make money. They're monetizing, to use the word, our attention. That's bad enough when we're adults, but it's appalling when we're children, because we're turning our children basically over to digital slave traders.
Are there ads on the dark web?
No, because the dark
How
web...
does the dark web make its money?
Well, you can pay for things on the dark web using bitcoins, this anonymous digital currency. But the motivation on the dark web is usually a bit more different. It's perverts and pimps and people who want to do... And
why are these monsters so untraceable?
Because the way the dark web works is you can't find out at all easily where the website is. If something happens on a website on the regular web, you can say, well, that is, GMB, and I don't like it. And you Google it, and you find out, and you can do something. You can say, there's Richard and there's Susanna, we don't like what they've done. And the whole weight of the legal system, eventually, very slowly, but it can come to bear. On the dark web, it's as if everyone's wearing masks and operating from addresses that you can't find. And so that makes it much harder.
So your solution, as far as young people are concerned, is to shut down social media from them completely and basically give them back the old brick phones they had
old brick
20 years ago.
phones give you the capability to stay safe, to call your parents, to say, I'm going to be late, but they don't allow this kind of the kind of mob rule mentality of social media, which is doing so much harm to kids' mental health in school. This is leaving aside all the predators and all the sort of the nasty stuff, just this kind of atmosphere of I've got to be popular and I don't have any friends and this sort of stuff. So schools that have banned phones have very good results. We can do this. You know, we prevent our children from having tattoos. We control whether they drink, whether they smoke. If they go for a sleepover, we expect to know where you're going, when you're coming back, who else is going to be there. We'll phone the other parents or the adults at the sleepover and say what's happening. That children have the right to be protected by their parents. They have a right to childhood. And in the digital world, they don't have it. No, we should give it back to them.
You said something very important in an article you wrote. Parents must regard their child's phone as family property.
Yes.
Not the child's property. I think there's an age at which that's not possible when your children are older teenagers. But I think if people could see giving the phone, perhaps at the time when their child goes to secondary school, that comes with, and by the way, as long as I'm paying the bill, I'm looking at what's on your phone up to an age where perhaps they might legitimately say, I want privacy. But there could be years, couldn't there?
Privacy is not an excuse, really.
No.
You don't allow children to privately take the family car out for a spin when drunk.
That's
You
true.
say, sorry, that's dangerous, you can't do that.
Lauren, I wonder if you back Esther's call for a ban on phones which have these apps on them for under 16-year-olds. And I also wonder how it struck you when she said in an interview yesterday that she'd be open to meeting the mother of Scarlett Jenkinson, one of the two killers.
I think that's very brave of her, and we never had any remorse shown towards us from our killer or his family. So I can't imagine that. If the family did want to talk to her and maybe say how sorry they were. I mean, all of these people have lost their lives. I mean, I don't think the killers thought through, you know, what they were going to end up doing and, you know, being caught and stuck, you know, in prison. So I think there's a lot of lessons here. I would actually prefer to meet up with Esther rather than her meet up with someone who I'm not sure. That's obviously her choice. But I think we have a lot of synergy together and there's so much work we can do. I do feel that asking to reinvent what we're doing now and change how, you know, 16-year-olds are able to access. I think we did miss the boat, and unfortunately these apps and the technology wasn't developed with children's safety from the beginning, from the start.
Just to say, the man who killed your son, he's still in jail, isn't he?
Yes, I mean, he's thrown his life away, so it just doesn't make sense to us normal people why someone would do something, but I do think it is the harmful content that they are coming across. Yeah. So what I would like to see is definitely more age restrictions and age verification on what children can access, 100%.
Lauren, you do such an incredible job in the midst of what you are still going through, which is very clear.
It's still hard. And as I mentioned, thank goodness for yoga.
Thank goodness for yoga. I know.
And family and friends and support, you know. Thank goodness.
We love you so much.
Oh,
thank you for being with us. Edward, thanks so much for your expert opinion as well. So much more needs to be done. We can't just accept that we've let the cat out of the bag.
No,
and that,
we have to keep trying.
Well, you made the analogy with the Wild West, but actually, in the end, the West was tamed.
Yes.
So it can be done.
It's just a question of political will.
Yes.
Don't believe it when they say this is about privacy, it's about freedom, it's about innovation, it's about convenience. No, it's about money and it's about perverts and pimps and rapists getting away with it.
And children's human rights need to come first.
Children's human rights.
The human right to be safe.
We have a human right to be a child.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
If you've been affected by those issues, there is advice and support at itv.com/helplines.